Hi everyone, this is Teresa Barton with the Guardian Network, and I am with a good friend and a great provider of care services, Gina Brooks with Comfort Keepers. Hi Gina.
Hi Teresa,
How
good
are
to
you?
see you.
Good to see you too. Today we're going to talk about understanding the real differences between your caregiver options. You may have heard of something called a registry. You've probably seen caregivers having ads on, say, Craigslist or in the newspaper in the old days, maybe not so much now. And then you've probably heard of caregiver companies. I want to really talk about the practicality of what those things mean. Gina and I have worked together for
5, 10.
That's all?
5 years?
5 years? Boy, it seems
yeah.
longer. Okay, 5 years. And her company provides caregivers for us in all kinds of environments. In their home, maybe just taking them to doctor's appointments for 4 or 5 hours at a clip. It also can be in an assisted living facility, maybe during a transition, moving from their home to the assisted living facility. We want the caregiver to be there to provide one-on-one care to get them comfortable in the transition. Also, with our clients who reside in nursing homes, unfortunately, most facilities are really struggling to not be short-staffed. And if you have the ability to have caregivers, your own caregivers, your individual caregivers to take care of your loved one, it's sort of a double check system. So we use caregivers there. We also use Comfort Keeper caregivers when we have a client going to the hospital. Because honestly, in this day and age, nobody should be in the hospital alone. Things happen, miscommunications. Clients, even with a little bit of dementia, will say something to the health provider, to the nurse, to the doctor that's inaccurate. I'm not allergic to penicillin. Yeah. And the whole thing can create a big problem. So we often have the caregivers essentially to be the voice of the client while they're in the hospital, moving from the emergency room to upstairs to maybe over to x-ray, then back. It's also keeping track of their stuff.
Yes, that's a big job.
Because somebody takes a bag with their clothes and their glasses and their dentures and they end up heavens only knows where. So that's some of the ways that we use Comfort Keepers. So Gina, talk a little bit about what Comfort Keepers, kind of what's the concept here? What do you try to do for your clients?
The main thing we like to do is we like to provide peace and comfort to the client plus the caregivers and the families. We always try to make them comfortable. We do anywhere from light housekeeping, we've played the piano with them, or cooking, cleaning, bathing.
Okay.
We try to help them in any way that we possibly can.
Okay, and you have clients in all kinds of environments, not
yes.
just the ones I talked about, but more.
No, we have them all in all areas. We were just last week with a client in the hospital.
Okay.
Like you said, it's a good thing to have extra ears there.
Right.
But we go to their home. We've been in the facilities, and it's very rewarding.
Right. All right. So I like to tell stories because I'm a storyteller, and I think we learn better through stories than any other way. So I'm going to tell you a story. This is a real story. It truly did happen. I was the advocate for a gal who lived in Winter Park. She had a nice home with a little mother-in-law suite. And she also had a little black kitty. She had a live-in caregiver who had lived there before I got involved in providing assistance to her family. And she lived in the home, in the mother-in-law suite, 5 days a week. She cared for the client. Now the client had, her Alzheimer's was not so bad. She was still walking. She was still doing some of her own personal care. So she was able, the caregiver, used the name Sue was able to sleep at night, and Kathleen, the client, did pretty well with the assistance of someone to help her during the day. Sue lived in the home and 5 days a week provided care to Kathleen, and on the weekends we had a relief caregiver who came in so that Sue could have Saturday and Sunday off. That went on for a long time and it really worked pretty well. This was 20-some years ago. It was my first experience in a very bad situation. So something happened with Sue as a caregiver. I don't know what happened. She changed and she wasn't a good caregiver anymore. And I had to make the decision to change and replace her. So I went to the home, Kathleen's home, to tell Sue I needed to change, I need to find another caregiver. Well, she was very upset. She locked herself in the mother-in-law suite of Kathleen's home and refused to leave.
Wow.
I had no idea this could happen. So I called the police. I thought, well, they'll help. I just called the police and they'll help. And the officer was very nice when he came, but he said, does Sue live here? And I said, well, she lives here for part of her job. He said, no, does she live here? I said, well, I'm not sure what that means. And he said, does she have a toothbrush here? I said, I think so. Does she get her mail here? Yes, she does. Then she's a resident. So that became a real problem. Law enforcement said she was actually a tenant, and I would have to initiate eviction to get her out. I was so shocked. I had no idea that this could happen. I tell this story all the time because I want people to know what I didn't know.
I had no clue.
No clue. So, big problem. First of all, I have a client who needs care right now. I have a caregiver who has locked herself in the mother-in-law suite, and the door's locked and is refusing to leave. So, kind of decide what's your first crisis solution. So I took Kathleen and the kit, and I found other care for them for the short term while I solved the problem with Sue. We were able to resolve it through basically a severance pay situation, but I had no idea that by keeping a private caregiver with no employment situation, she wasn't employed by anybody other than me as the advocate for Kathleen, that I was putting us in such harm's way.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the reasons why that can't happen when we use Comfort Keeper caregivers. Let's talk about some of the protections that by using Comfort Keeper caregivers, we would not have that situation.